Day 31, cockpit canopy. This morning I put the second coat of the red on it. It's fairly well covered everywhere. There's only a couple of little light spots, but we're not going to worry about that because it gets a third coat of pearl red over the top of this. But before I go any farther, I have to put the canopy on. I've looked at this several times and tried to figure out what's the best way for me to do this. If you glue a canopy just straight on to the fuselage, it's bound to come off. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take a felt tip marker and I'm going to trace around the entire perimeter of the canopy, and I'm going to take a cutoff wheel on a Dremel tool and I'm going to cut a very slight slot indentation into that, and then I'm going to take a T-pin and put a bunch of holes in the canopy along that line. Then we'll take 5-minute epoxy and set that down into that slot. However, I'm a little bit farther ahead of myself than need be. I've just got it on there where I think it looks about right. I tried several canopies. I was going to use the other one, the other SIG 11-inch, but opted out for the P51 canopy that I had bought at Brodax while I was there. It looks pretty good, but it fits well. It's wide enough. The other one was too narrow, and the hole for the pilot, because he's so big, is pretty wide. So we need this this canopy here. I did cut the canopy out, and I did sand the shape into it so it fits down perfectly on the fuselage. You want that fit to be really good. You don't want it stressed. The next step in this process is I'm going to make the 2 air tanks for behind the pilot. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to glue a dowel inside 1-inch piece of square balsa stock, and then I'm going to sand the balsa round, split it in half, and put the bands on it. I won't show that on camera because it's rather boring, and I tried I'm trying to make the videos where you're not watching paint dry or me sand. I'm learning on the videos. I hope you guys like them. We still haven't picked up much weight, so that's a good thing. Let's weigh it up and see what our finish has weighed so far. Remember, it started out at 30 ounces with nothing on it, and that's without the pilot and canopy. So we've gained 4.5 ounces in finish so far. That's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's going to get a sanding, one more sanding, and after I get the cockpit on, tomorrow we'll probably get the pearl red, because this was the base for the pearl, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to mix that up. I will do that on camera to show you what I'm doing for the paint. And I hope that it looks good. I have no clue. It's all an experiment. But so far the woodwork's real nice. Everything's real smooth. It's, like I say, it's not a super featherweight, but if I were to finish this up at 20 or 40 ounces, my hardware is 20 ounces. That's a 60-ounce airplane. And actually my hardware is only 17 and a half. So right now we're at 6 is 12, 13. I'm at 54 ounces if I didn't go any farther with anything. But that's just not gonna be the way it is, because we're gonna have to get some clear on it. And I think I'm gonna use the I was gonna use Phil Granderson's clear, but I think I'm just gonna go with the straight dope for ease of repair in case I need to repair this airplane down the road, the dope is a whole lot easier to repair than automotive clear. And like I said, the woodwork has come out just great, so we don't have to bury anything in the clear. I'm hoping that you like it. I'm hoping that you like the videos that I'm doing. It is a lot of work to do them, but I like to share, and I hope you're getting something out of them. And if you need to see something, you know, let me know. It's a whole lot easier for me to make a video than it is for me to sit down and type all this stuff on the computer. So, to take pictures and load them up on the web. I like to talk about the light spots. There's a light spot and a dark spot. Light spot right here, not a big deal. We'll just take the paint gun and I'll just dust that right there. On this dark spot here, I don't know why it got dark, but we're going to hit it with a little primer just to get the light or the dark out of it, and then paint over it with the red. The paint on this is just absolutely thin, so I can't really sand too much. But it's on real smooth, so I'm happy with that. So we'll see in a few when I get the tanks made. When I get ready to attach this canopy, I will do that on camera. But I'm going to make the tanks off camera, so we'll see in a bit. I'd like to talk about the air tanks that I'm making, and I'll show you. You know, not everybody has a lathe or whatever to make these little parts. So what I do is I cut a piece of wood, a block of balsa wood, and I glue it to a dowel, and I put it in my drill. And I sand it with a block, which is here. As it's turning, just run the drill and sand it. And when you get it to the shape that you want, you take some finer paper and then sand it. And then I'm going to cut this off, cut the dowel out of it, and sand the other end. Then we'll split it in half, and I'll have 2 air tanks for behind here. CA on it for a quick finish, prime it up, paint it. Not a big deal. This whole project will take probably a half an hour to make these air tanks. So, just a neat little added detail. I just thought that I'd throw that in there because, like I said, a lot of guys don't have a lathe. Well, I don't have a lathe either. I have a metal lathe out in the garage, but just go ahead and drill the dowel into the block of wood, turn the drill on, sand it straight, sand the end on it, cut it off, and then round the other end. Not a big deal. So we'll go ahead and cut this end off and sand up the other end, and then I'll split it. How far down that dowel goes. That'll look pretty good. So now I'll take the sanding block that I dropped here. And unfortunately you can only do the one end and get it perfect, so you got to do the other one by eye to get the round end on it like a tank. But hey, it took a minute to do this. I'm not kidding at all. So, just give you an idea of what you can do with little ingenuity and little thought. We'll take 64th plywood and make 1/8-inch strips and make a couple of bands on it. And I don't have any more of those little decal that say oxygen anymore, but so then I take the fine sandpaper make a moon gas tank like this. I had painted my my other oxygen tanks in the Continental Silver, but I'm not sure. I'm thinking that O2 is maybe green. I'm going to have to, green or blue, I'm going to have to look and see what color the tanks are supposed to be for liquid oxygen. But here we have a little jelly bean that will later get split in half, right dead in half, so I can have two tanks, one next to each other on top. So we'll see you in a short. Alright, what we got going on now is I've made the tanks like I told you, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with those. And I made a small stick here. It's I don't know what you call it, the yoke. And of course, like I said, I made these tanks here with the balsa wood and the drill, and then I split them in half, finished them and split them in half. First painted them black, and then taped them off, and then painted the tank silver. And they go right here behind the pilot, and they're just simulating air tanks or some kind of tank of some sort. I don't know. Just something to give a little detail. Tom had them in his, so anyway, we're going to mark out the canopy, and then I'm going to glue the pilot and the stick in and the tanks on. So here we go. Hopefully you can see what we're doing here. First, I have it marked already where I wanted it. Maybe. There we go. And I just push a T-pin in it. And there. And we're going to sight down it and make sure that it's in the right spot. That looks pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Sharpie marker and I'm going to outline it where it goes. So somebody was, I read on the Facebook or whatever, that they thought this airplane was salmon colored. Well, it's Miss Ashley red, and it looks pretty red to me. Alright. Now we have it marked out where it's going to go. Take it back off. we're going to cut a ditch there. Boy, it looks like a drop down. Kind of messed up on that. Onto the pin. Doesn't matter because this is all going to get painted anyway. Gets super fill and painted and sanded, and the whole airplane gets another coat of paint, unfortunately. But what are you going to do? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a stick pin and put these air tanks where I think they go. Centered up there. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to take a T-pin, I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to stipple this area. Under the tank. Take the other side off and stipple it. What that does is give a spot for the epoxy to bond to. It would probably stay on without stippling it, but that little trick is free, so it don't matter. Next, I take my favorite epoxy mixing tool, which is Model Aviation, and we're going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy. Don't need a lot. And when we put these on, we got one chance, we got one shot to get them on correctly. So be careful. So we don't get any oozing out. I'm going to keep the epoxy right in the center where I put the stipple marks. Say one shot. And it oozed out anyway. Isn't that something? Oh well, we'll get the paper towel and wipe it off. I hate that. But we know it's on there. There's plenty of... I guess I used too much. Like I say, it mushed out from underneath it. That's pretty good. Let's do the other one. Okay. Hopefully we can refrain from it oozing out on this one. Well, now it's time to glue the pilot in. What I did was the floor of this is plywood, and I couldn't pick it, so I took an X-Acto knife and I scraped the paint off the floor. And we're just going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy. And glue the pilot in. Now this is another tricky install on this pilot because he barely fits in there. So instead of putting the glue on the pilot and then moving it around so that you can see it on the floor of the cockpit, we're just going to take the glue and put it right on the floor of the cockpit in those scraped marks. Make sure you get him glued in good, because you surely don't want him flopping around. So that's pretty good. Now the base of the pilot, he was built up on balsa wood. So it's going to be balsa wood to plywood joint. Like I say, he's a tight fit. And put him back and set him down. Push him down real good. And in 5 minutes, we'll come back and we'll see if he's in there solid. If he's in there solid, we'll proceed to the next step, which is getting the base of the canopy ready. First we're going to sand it, and then I'm going to take a needle or a pin and poke holes all the way around it so that the epoxy has something to grab to. Then I'm going to take, I'm not sure yet, I might take a parting wheel and then grind this line in here, or I might stipple it. I'm not sure. I might just stipple it. But I want something to be able to bond the epoxy. We want a good solid joint on that. And then it gets painted before we go on any farther. And then the blue superfill goes on, so we don't see the superfill on the inside. I also have a little, like I said, a little stick here. Might as well glue him in there if I can. I got one chance to get him in. And that's it. We're not going to have a whole lot of cockpit detail, just something, you know, it's got gauges in there, and now it's got the yoke and the pilot with the headset and the air tanks. And that's basically all we're going to simulate. We're not going to go crazy by putting throttle quadrants and trim tabs and all that other stuff in there. I think that'll look just fine. Matter of fact, it looks real good, just as is. I might take my Rapidiograph and make a few lines in there, but I haven't decided yet. So we'll be back in a short. Okay, I'm getting ready to paint the inside of the canopy, the framework. And I don't expect everybody to go out, rush out and buy these, but I was a sign painter at one particular time, and I have Kafka liners and striping brushes, and this is a quill. And we're going to use a quill. These are about 25 bucks a piece. They're for painting signs. Really good equipment. Got to take good care of them, so you make sure that you wash them out. The nice thing about them is the long bristles. They have extra long bristles. You can do a YouTube search and find them on YouTube. And the guy's pretty nice to deal with. So I'm going to line the bottom of the canopy. You may choose to tape them off or whatever, but you load the brush on a pallet. It's called pulling a line. Of course, this is dope, and it doesn't quite act like one shot, but it's not too bad. I'll load the brush. Oh, that helps. That helped. Have a place to rest my hand. When I edit this up, I'll probably do it at 2 times the speed. Well, let's see if we can do the center line. That might be a little more difficult. You know what? I don't think I want to attempt it. I think I'll do that just from the outside. Oh yeah. That'll look good. I don't know why the red doesn't show up really red on the video, but if you're familiar with Miss Ashley Red, it's a bright red. Bright red. Somebody was saying it looks salmon colored, but I can't see. Well, here we go. I got one chance to get this right. That's all you get is one. I got the air tanks mounted, I got the pilot mounted, I got the yoke mounted, along with the dashboard. This is going to be my last chance to clean any debris out of the cockpit, because we're going to mount the canopy. What I've done is, first off, I painted the ledge around the bottom. Then I took a pen and I stippled this every quarter inch. I put a hole in it. I did the same thing along the line that I drew earlier. And we're going to epoxy this with 5-minute epoxy onto that line. And I got one shot to get it on there right. So we get the alcohol ready. That's the 81 proof. We got the towels ready in case we do have any mixed, any run over. And we're going to mix up the epoxy. Okay, today is cockpit blending, and or canopy blending. And let me explain what I'm doing here. Now, if you remember yesterday, I painted the underside of the canopy with a brush red, so we couldn't see the epoxy and the filler on the inside. And that's the reason why we painted it inside, not outside, after we put this stuff on. Because I don't want to see that blue putty from inside the canopy. So, first it looked like this. And then I've taken 80 grit sandpaper and feathered the edge of the canopy down in this direction here. And I'm going to do that all the way around, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to tape off the glass and then tape off a line all the way around, and then we're going to super fill it. So give me a few minutes, I'll finish the other side and get this taped up. Okay, here you see I have the canopy taped off. Do an extra careful job on this because you want to make sure that you get the lines exactly correct where you want them, because you got one chance on that too. Next, we'll go ahead and run a tape line all the way around the outside on the bottom, and I'll show you how that's done. I'm going to paint the trim, some of the trim pearl red. Reason being is, I got to thinking about it. I go, what if I ever have to repair this airplane? Never be able to match pearl red. So it'll just be Miss Ashley red with pearl red trim. And, well, it'll still have several shades of red trim. You know, I just noticed I probably ought to have a piece of masking tape on the paint so I don't get that everywhere, so we'll mask it off. Stuff's so messy. For this, we can use a regular masking tape because it's not going to stay on there very long. A lot of times the body shop will give you masking tape. I had the guy give me 12 rolls of a new tape he's trying. I don't particularly care for it. It's not as good as the high performance stuff that I was buying, but heck, it was free. If you buy paint from the paint store, they'll give you mixing cups. I have a real good rapport with my local Sherwin-Williams dealer. This doesn't have to be exact, it's just to keep from getting the putty on the paint as I'm spreading it up. We could do it without, but remember I told you easier on yourself is better. Okay, we got that. Now we're back to spreading. Keep it thin, you don't want it on a real globule. we'll be going back here with the alcohol and smoothing it out when it stiffens up a little bit for less sanding. Okay, I've removed the tape, and if you look here, there's a large ridge all over that. This putty, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. This putty is not ready to be manipulated. It's still in the runny state. So when it firms up, we'll come back with the 91 proof alcohol and smooth it all out so we have less sanding to do. And it's a relatively simple operation. And when it's done, it yields a perfect joint. And it's a strong joint because first off, the canopy was stippled with the pin. It has a hole every 1/4 inch. Then where the canopy mounts on the line, it has a hole every 1/4 inch, and they're not lined up, they're interlocked, so it acts like a zipper. And then epoxy is spread on, and then I set the canopy down and I pinned it in place and let it sit overnight. We've taken 80 grit sandpaper and sanded all the way around the canopy on the paint and on the plastic, so the plastic is rough, and taped it off like I showed you and locked that down so that aside from landing upside down or having somebody grab a hold of it to pick the airplane up, it'll never come off. And I'm not sure that it would come off even if grabbing a hold of it and trying to pick the airplane up. It might crack, but it shouldn't come off. It might crack the paint because it's not flexible. But this is the story on how I put the canopy on in this situation. And it should work just fine. So, we'll give it probably a half an hour. I'll come back and massage it with the alcohol and get it smooth and ready to sand. And then I'll come back and show you what's going on. So, see you in a few. Quick report, just it's been probably half an hour or so. I've been massaging this area with alcohol. It's not perfectly flat, but we're going to wait for it to harden. So it's probably going to be a few hours. And then I'm going to come back and sand it with a small block. And block that in, blend it. Then it gets one coat of red over the top of the frame. Then I can come back and prime the area and finish massaging it and use the spot putty to fill any of the lows. But super nice. It'll be super clean. And I hope this helps you. So we'll see you in an hour or two and block it out. Okay, about 2 hours has passed by, maybe 3, and I've rough sanded this and got it kind of blended in. It's relatively dry. It's dry enough to continue. First using 80 grit, then dropping down to 150 and smoothing it out. Then I took the red paint and I painted the windscreen frame from the outside. And that's before we put the DC 540 on it. That way it's going to be red on the inside instead of gray. So now we're going to add the DC 540 and continue to massage this. Put it on, sand it off, put it on, sand it off until it's perfectly blended in. Remember these, when you first put this on, it's like, oh no, what a lot of work this is going to be. But if you want a good canopy joint or a nice model, it's just what it takes. It takes work. And it looks terrible. So instead of boring you with how I sand this. I'll put it on, sand it off, put it on, sand it off until I got it all blended in. We'll come back, get a look at it, and I'll show you when I paint it. So, see you in a while. Okay, camera in hand, this is where we're at. This is the second sand out, and it looks pretty good. There's a couple of spots like right here where it looks a little low, and I'll sand it out again. You see that spot right there, and then there's one back here. I'll sand that out, and one on the other side, and we'll get one more sand out, then we'll shoot it red, and I'll take the tape off, and then we can go back to painting the whole airplane again, or I might leave the tape on, I'm not sure. But that's how I get a cockpit and canopy put on easily, and this is all transpired in the same day, and it's not a big deal. So we'll see you in a short. Okay, we're going to end this clip here. This is the way it's supposed to look. It took 5 sand outs to get it this way. There's no bumps or anything in it, but it took just a few hours to mount the canopy and get it on there so that it's perfectly blended in. We'll go ahead and go on to the next phase on another clip, the painting. I've been thinking about the paint job. I don't know whether I stated before or not. I'm not sure that I'm going to go with any pearl red in the main color, just for the simple fact of repair. And now that I remember, I did mention that. So, we will do some pearl color, but it won't be in the main color, it'll be in the trim. So the thing for today is we're going to let this dry overnight, and I'm going to doctor up any of the little spots on the airplane anywhere. Keep tinkering with it, and then tomorrow I'll shoot the whole thing, the base red again, and that's where we are on this project now. So, till tomorrow, stay tuned.